Welcome to Disability News and Views, a program brought to you by the City of Boston's Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities. We have a lot of great information and updates for you this episode, so let's get started. As you may know, the Orange Line is now open and running after being closed for 30 days. We're so happy to see it back, especially with some critical safety and accessibility upgrades. Upgrades include entrances to Forest Hill Station are now fully accessible, and elevators that were under repair there are now open and running for business. Over 80 new Orange Line cars are running on tracks now, and these cars feature visual and audio messaging, priority seating, dedicated wheelchair seating areas, and accessible signage, all very important features for people with disabilities. Also, sections of sidewalk near MBTA stations have been repaired, including broken concrete slabs, detectable warnings, and bricks were all replaced at these stations to make them more accessible. Great news from the MBTA. Last month in September, we recognized National Emergency Preparedness Month, and the Disabilities Commission joined Ready Boston Field Day at English High School, an event hosted by the Office of Emergency Management. Attendees of the event were able to learn how to best prepare in case of an emergency. They received resources from over 30 different city departments and community organizations. They also got to learn more about Alert Boston, a system for residents, businesses, and visitors to be able to receive notifications by phone, text, or email in the event of an emergency. You can sign up for Alert Boston by emailing oem@boston.gov or calling 617-635-1400. Now, earlier this month, the Disabilities Commission, in partnership with the City of Boston's Elections Department, hosted Civic Engagement Day for people with disabilities here in Boston City Hall. At the event, people with disabilities of all ages came to City Hall to better understand how they can get involved in local city government. More than 100 Boston Public School students with disabilities attended, and many of them registered to vote for the first time. Mayor Wu, Councilor President Ed Flynn, and others from the City Council spoke to the crowd that filled the Ionella Chamber in Boston City Hall to the brim. It was great to see so many people with disabilities eager, able, and willing to make Boston a more accessible and inclusive community. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And on that subject, it's important to know that on Tuesday, November 8th, there is an important election. And the City of Boston has implemented accessible electronic voting for any person with disability who needs it to privately, independently, and securely vote. The accessible electronic voting option is available to residents with disabilities that affect their ability to complete a paper ballot. If you qualify for this option, you first have to submit a vote by mail application to the local election office. Here in Boston, the deadline to request a vote by mail application is 5 p.m. on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Boston residents can make these requests through the Boston Elections Department by visiting boston.gov/elections or calling 617-635-8683. Now, all month long this October, we will be celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month. The Disabilities Commission is hosting a program in collaboration with the Mass Rehabilitation Commission to increase people with disabilities awareness of jobs here in City Hall. And speaking of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, let me turn things over to my co-host Ken Meyer, who is interviewing Alex Gray on that very subject.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Alex, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Ken. I'm very happy to be here.
Let's go back a little bit before you wound up working. Let's go back a little bit. Before you started working at City Hall, you were lucky enough to work for transportation and public safety with Governor Deval Patrick. And I would venture to say that the T might have been one of your biggest problems. Am I right about that?
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Ken. Very happy to be here. And so, yeah, I graduated in the spring of 2012 from law school and had the great opportunity to work for former Governor Deval Patrick and Lieutenant Governor Tim Murray. And the two issues that I focused primarily on were transportation and public safety. And you're right on that, you know, when you're talking transportation in Massachusetts, particularly in Boston, the MBTA is always at the top of the list. So it was an exciting time to work on that. The governor was rolling out the Fairmont commuter rail line, obviously, in various neighborhoods of Boston, Hyde Park, Mattapan, and Dorchester. And, you know, as somebody who's blind, obviously I rely on the MBTA every day, and it's so important to so many folks with disabilities throughout Boston. So it was really meaningful for me to have the opportunity to not only be a user of the system, but also to be able to work for Governor Patrick on a policy perspective on the matter of the subway.
Tell us how long you were there and how you got involved with workforce development.
Absolutely. So I was with Governor Patrick for about 2 years in the years of 2012 and 2013. I then came down to City Hall with Mayor Martin Walsh when he was elected. I started with him on his first day in office, which was January of 2014. I worked in the executive office of the mayor for a little under 2 years on a multitude of issues, touched on some education, some environmental issues, really arts, kind of right down the line, worked on a number of different topics for him. Really enjoyed working for both Mayor Walsh and Governor Patrick. And then in August of 2015, I started work in the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development, and that's where I've been since then, Ken.
All right, let's explore that a little bit. When you say workforce development, tell us about that and what it means and what you do.
Absolutely, yeah. It's certainly a term that I think we hear a lot, but you know, I wasn't maybe 100% certain of the definition until I got sort of working on it in my career. My wife actually worked on workforce development a little bit ahead of me, so I had some familiarity. But, you know, I think the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development really tries to focus on finding career pathways for the residents of Boston that, you know, have upward mobility, you know, have access to good living wage jobs with benefits. And that really, you know, can vary depending on the need of the person. But, you know, we have a really talented staff of individuals working in the Office of Workforce Development, or as we call it, OWD. And, you know, they're working on things as varied as apprenticeships in the construction, the hotel and hospitality trade, you know, trying to get Boston residents into those types of jobs, you know, helping to fund adult education, English as a second language opportunities. You know, we have an Office of Financial Empowerment that's doing a lot of great things around, you know, free tax help and prep during tax season, helping people with the Boston Builds credit program to help them build their credit, helping, you know, people really on a multitude of things, you know, things like children's savings accounts, the mayor's tuition-free community college plan. So, you know, it's a really interesting office that funds a lot of great programs throughout the city. And we also have a set of really, I think, innovative programs run out of our office that are making a real difference in the lives of our Boston residents.
Okay, how do you find the candidates? Do you send mass mailings to the various schools and colleges, like to high schools when they're to the senior classes, or how do you recruit the students?
It's a great question. Yeah, so I was really fortunate to be one of the first staff members that worked on the tuition-free community college plan, really from the phase where it was sort of a Word document that we were coming up with ideas in very, very late 2015, through some of the implementation phase and the late spring, early summer of 2016, I think it was. And there's a really talented group of individuals that have gone on to really take the program to higher and higher levels. But, I think when I was working on some of the outreach and recruitment, we hit the ground, boots on the ground. We went to introduce the program. We certainly visited as many of the high schools as we could throughout the city, talking to classes, talking to guidance counselors, talking to principals, talking to teachers, and just trying to meet people where they're at different events throughout the year. And, certainly building relationships with guidance counselors for them to put the word out to their students. So, really a partnership between Office of Workforce Development, Boston Public Schools, and the area community colleges and nonprofits.
Okay, oh boy, I wish that were true. I'm a young high school student, and I'm sitting in a classroom and I'm hearing you talk about tuition programs and everything else. And I think to myself, that really sounds interesting. Now, do you do an assessment? Do you come to the people's homes and talk to the parents and the students?
So certainly if folks are watching out there and they're interested, certainly feel free to go to owd.boston.gov. Plenty of information on the website. You could call 311 to be connected to the City of Boston and just ask for the Office of Workforce Development. And, we certainly have a lot of people that would be very happy to chat with them about whatever it is their interests are, walk them through the program. So certainly always happy to connect with our constituents on whatever it is they want to chat about.
Does income of the parents make a difference in how a student's vocation work is structured?
So yeah, this is certainly a program that I think you could say works hand in hand with the FAFSA, applying for that, monitoring the need. And, I think it's been referred to as a last dollar grant, and it can, step in to fill the need of whatever it is, after folks take into consideration their package at a given community college.
Okay, so I decide that I want to be a hotshot lawyer. So I go to a school like Suffolk and graduate with honors. Oh, that were true. Anyway, I graduate with honors. Do I come back to you and do you try and place a student that wants to further his particular interest in a particular field, or do you just leave it up to them?
Yeah, we work hand in hand with a lot of the job centers in the City of Boston, the one-stop centers, other organizations. The Office of Workforce Development, we're really proud to support a lot of the partner agencies in the city with a multitude of funding sources that we receive, from the federal government, state government to some degree, and also from real estate related transactions through programs like our Neighborhood Jobs Trust. So, a lot of what we're doing is, identifying resources and supporting the agencies that are doing the work. We have some programs, City Academy is one that, works with folks that are looking for, say, commercial driver's license or other EMT training. So, I would always encourage folks to reach out to our office. And I think that, again, our website's owd.boston.gov. If you want to call 311 again and just ask for the Office of Workforce Development. I think folks in our office are always happy to chat. We may be, passing you off to really talented organizations throughout the city that may be doing some of the more hands-on work as it pertains to whatever it is that you're looking to overcome in your career search. But I think that certainly we would always like to be a resource if possible.
All right, you keep mentioning agencies. Let's talk about some of those agencies and who they are and who you might work with on an individual basis.
Yeah, it really would depend on obviously the day, the week, the month of the year. I mean, obviously there's the 2 one-stop centers, the mass hire centers that are very frequently used. There's other partnerships, Jewish Vocational Services, Goodwill is another, obviously. We work with all kinds of places, depending on whatever it is that they need. So it, partially would depend on what the needs are. Is it, to get sort of job training skills to work on your sort of soft skills, resume writing, interview skills, or is this somebody that's, more ready to be placed and wants to, kind of deal with somebody a little bit more specifically, like in, for example, working with a program like Building Pathways in the construction trade, if they know that they want to go into construction, or the Best Corps if they're interested in the hotel and hospitality. So again, I think we do a multitude of things over the course of a day, a month, or a year, and certainly would encourage folks to reach out if we can be helpful, and always want to try to connect them with the right services.
Do you do mock interviews? In other words, do you work with a student and say, this is what you should say instead of what you just said, or anything like that, to give them?
Again, like, I think our role is always is best when we're
Right.
sort of supporting organizations with the funding.
Alex, I am without sight myself, as you are, and I'm curious to see what adaptive technology you use for the city, and also how was it for you with the T shutdown for a couple of weeks?
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, so I think that for me personally, I like to think I have a number of sort of, if I'm a pitcher in baseball, right, I have a number of pitches that I use in a different scenarios. So, my fastball might be using the screen reader JAWS that I use. And, for folks that don't know what that is, it's what I type, it reads back out to me. So, in some respects, people often ask me if it's like Dragon. It's a little bit sort of opposite of that, where instead of me talking into it and it interpreting what I say and putting it into the computer, I'll type and sort of navigate a Word document or a browser with my keyboard instead of using a mouse. So that's really helpful for me when I'm, typing a Word document or reading emails or trying to find my way through an Excel spreadsheet. Like a lot of folks, I use a white cane, to get around from my house to the subway, and, from the subway to my office, and in and around my office, or to meetings. And that's really helpful in order to allow me to safely navigate around the city. And, there's other things. I have a smartphone, an iPhone, where I use the VoiceOver software that comes with the iPhone, and I'll use that for, text messaging, or, asking if I have any appointments today, or whatever the case is. And I think I maybe don't use it quite as much as I used to, but, I have a Braille writer at home, a Perkins Braille writer, which is able to, type little notes if I need to have them in a place where I'm not going to have my computer or my phone available to me for public speaking, or if I want to make sure, I have a phone number or an address just in case technology fails, which, as I'm sure Ken, it does from time to time. And you did ask about the subway, and, it was certainly a challenge. I have a lot of respect for the work that the MBTA does, and all the team that they have there. It's a really hard job to keep a system up and running that is so expansive, throughout all of Boston and greater Boston. But, it certainly was a challenge. We live by the Forest Hills subway station, and so we would take the commuter rail to South Station, and then My wife, myself, and our infant would walk up towards City Hall. He goes to childcare there, and then my office is just a little ways off from City Hall. So thankfully, it was really only about, I think I did the math, it was 19 commutes, and we made it through it. Would be happy to not have to do that again, but we're on the other end of it now, thankfully, Ken.
All right. October is Disability Awareness Month. I know that in our office, people come in and, as the term is, they shadow you and watch what you do and how you work and things like that. Is that happening in your office?
Yeah, thank you, Ken. So I've been really I've been happy to participate in the shadow program in the past. Commissioner McCosh does a really great job for Boston, and when she asked when I was, I think it must have been 2014 or 2015, in the mayor's executive office, was really happy to host somebody for that. And I think October as Disability Employment Awareness Month is really important. I mean, I think that when we talk about accessibility in the city, obviously we want sidewalks that are accessible. We want ramps, we want elevators, we want physical infrastructure that's accessible. But I think if we really want to realize the dream of the American with Disabilities Act that so many people worked so hard to achieve, the next generation of that work is really continuing to push and stretch the definition of accessibility to having jobs available. Sadly, there's an exceedingly high amount of people with disabilities are unemployed. I've seen in the blind community, that number estimated sometimes as high as 70%. And so, I think we need to make sure that, it's not just that our, K through 12 schools and our colleges are accessible, but that we have workplaces that understand, the value and what people with disabilities bring to a workplace. And, I think that we need to continue, all of the things that, were promised under the ADA. We've come a long way, but the work continues. And so I think that making sure that employment options are available and celebrating Disability Employment Awareness Month is a really great way to do that.
I'm sure ADA has helped you and made your work a little easier.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, again, I have so much respect for the work that has been done to bring the disability community to where we are now. If you read or watch some of the documentaries, Crip Camp on Netflix and other things, it's really moving, to see the sacrifices that people made. But I think all of us would admit that there's still work to go. And I think again, some of that is infrastructure. Some of it is digital infrastructure, making sure, as we transition to a digital world, that there's accessibility, but, it's also attitudinal. We need to make sure that people with disabilities are included in all aspects of life, and that, we continue the work to make it that, people see that, you can have pride in having a disability, and it's nothing, to be ashamed of. It's a part of life. Like anything, it brings challenges, but it also brings perspective, and it brings skills, whether that's adaptiveness or patience or the ability to listen or empathy. I think we could all agree, Ken, those are things that our world could use a little more of these days.
What other agencies in City Hall do you work with, like Public Works, for example, on curb cuts and things like that?
Certainly over the time I've been in city government, I've been in touch with transportation and public works around, audio signals at street corners, and, the challenge of clearing snow in our winters. But yeah, really I've worked on a lot of issues, Office of Workforce Development. We work with certain offices a little more than others, Economic Development Office, Planning and Development Agency. But I think it's a really cooperative environment. The Disability Commission is great. Always happy to work with them. So yeah, it's a very collaborative environment.
All right. In closing, is there anything you would like to add or any message you'd like to send out to the public?
Just, thank folks for taking the time to watch this. Certainly from an employment perspective, if you have any questions or needing some resources in terms of thinking about a job or finding a job, again, the Office of Workforce Development would love to be a resource. Our website is owd.boston.gov, or feel free to call 311. And, I think for folks with disabilities, just know that, you have the ability to chart the life that you want to live. It won't always be easy, and you might have to face some challenges, but, certainly never give up on whatever it is that you want to pursue. And you have a great resource in Commissioner McCosh and her team, and certainly always feel free to reach out to them for whatever needs you might have.
All right, let's give their telephone number, which is 617-635-3682. In case anyone has any disability problems, they feel free to call that number. There's a great staff up there, and they would certainly be willing to take the time to help. And I guess that will do it. So thank you so much, Alex, for taking some time to be with us. And that will do it for this edition of Disability News and Views.